Welcome to the Rural Revival Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Larson. This week we're in Fairfax, Oklahoma with Emily Myers of Lantana Made. Emily is a ranch wife and mom who crafts Western handmade bags out of her home on the ranch. From an internship at Fort Worth Stockyards to a job at Miranda Lambert's Pink Pistol store, she's sharing about the journey that led to Lantana Made. Since starting her business, she's put her own mark on the Western fashion world, and today she's telling us all about it. So here we go with Emily Myers. All right, well, we're here today with Emily Myers of Lantana Made. That is now newly based out of Fairfax, Oklahoma. Emily, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit about you and growing up in Oklahoma.
I grew up in central Oklahoma. I was raised on a modest farm. We raised foundation quarter horses and limousine cattle. And my parents raised us showing horses and judging horses. And as busy as what we were with that, I didn't go to school. I was homeschooled, which is, kind of back then, it wasn't nearly as popular as what it is now. And a lot of people ask me like, well, didn't you miss going to school? And I didn't know any different. So like, I didn't miss anything. And they kept us really busy in activities, church functions, horse shows, judging contests. And I feel like my brother and sister and I were really socialized, and whenever I got to college, I was fully prepared because when you're homeschooled, you teach yourself pretty much, so you already know how to study.
That's true. That is an advantage.
Yeah.
I struggled with that myself. Well, where did you go then from college? Did you kind of have an idea of what you wanted to go into?
Yes, I knew that I wanted to go into interior design. My dad has his own construction company, and my brother, who's 8 years older than me, was in construction management. And so I thought, like, how can I kind of go into that, but also, like, use my creativity? And that was interior design. So I started down that path, and about a year into school, I met my now husband. And he was in a degree that was, like, completely the opposite end of the spectrum from me. And we started dating, and it got more and more serious, and I was more and more into interior design, and I really liked it. But we kind of sat down and talked about, like, values and what we wanted our life to kind of be like. And when we did that, what we had in common is we wanted to raise our kids on a ranch. And he was going to school for animal science, and so I always wanted that. My papa, he was actually a ranch manager, and so that was like in my background, and I grew up, on a farm. I wouldn't necessarily call it a ranch, but I always wanted that lifestyle. And so, of course, with that, you're going to live in a rural community, and I just thought, like, I love this design stuff, but where am I going to live close enough to a big city to be able to get the kind of job that I want? So I decided to switch after 2 years of interior design. I switched to merchandising, which a lot of people, whenever they think merchandising, they think of visual merchandising. And, that is right. That is part of it. But the other part of it is learning how to become like an overall merchant. So you're learning the buying aspects of it. You're learning how to run a retail store just all the way around. And so it was more business, which was fantastic for what I ended up doing, because obviously the 2 years that I was in design was so important, because all aspects of design, like the elements of it, are the same no matter what you're designing. And so I was able to take that from what I learned there, and then also for what the business part of it was, and kind of, I guess, merge the two together for Lantana Made.
I love that. Well, I know part of that experience, or maybe it was right after college, you got to intern at the Fort Worth Stockyards.
Yes, ma'am, I did. So in 2013, Evan and I we remained dating, but we both encouraged each other to pursue our dreams. So I actually studied abroad in Greece, and then he was on a summer works wagon in Arizona. And that was like a whole summer thing. And then we got back and I needed an internship to be able to graduate. And it was just required. And I had gone to the Fort Worth Stockyards with friends for a bachelorette party. And we went into Rio's Interiors. And I remember walking through the door and just like being amazed, like, this is what I want to do with my life. Like a light bulb like turned on, like, this is amazing. I want to work here. And so whenever I was brainstorming for internships ideas, I was like, well, duh, that's where I need to go. And so I called them, and they didn't have an internship program. But I was like, well, let's make one, like, have me, please. I want to come. And Carla, the manager, she really made me work for it. Like, I was even pursuing other options while I was still pursuing that, because I was like, I don't know if it's going to happen. But I kept calling, and I ended up getting it. And I was like, I don't care what you pay me. Like, just make sure that I can afford the gas there. Because at the time, my sister lived near Fort Worth. So it was just like perfect, And so I started there, and I think it doesn't take very long, conversating with me to realize, like, that I'm the opposite of furniture salesman. And so she really took me under her wing. And what I realized is, if you really want to sell high-end things, you don't need to be a furniture salesman. Like, you need to be authentic. You need to sell a story. You need to sell things that you believe in. And Carla taught me how to be that way and how to establish relationships with customers, and which made them, continue to return. And within the 2 months that I was there, like, once I learned how to do that, it was just like this huge door opened up to a complete understanding of, like, seriously, how you can sell a $15,000 couch. Like, when you walk into a place like that, it's like, do people really spend this on furniture? And yes, they do, if you explain to them why it is worth that much. So that was fun.
What an amazing experience.
It really was. It was very invaluable to what I do now, because it introduced me to high-end Western retail and, the people in that world, and that's amazing.
Wow. Well, at this point, did you have any hint of an idea of starting a business to do what you do now?
No, I wanted to stay there. I loved it. And actually, I thought that I was going to be able to stay there. And Evan was, at that time, he was going to TCU, to the ranch management program there. And I just had it all in my mind that, he was going to find a job in Fort Worth, and I was going to keep working there. Because I loved it so much, and I was good at it too. I mean, I really was, and they wanted me to come back. I had a standing job offer, and I went back to OSU. I finished my last semester, and instead of walking down the stage to get my diploma, I walked down the aisle and married Evan.
Nice.
So, yes, which of course I graduated. I got my diploma. I just didn't walk. But from there, like the month before I think it was 2 months before we got married, we still didn't know where we were going to be. And we were going on a ton of job interviews. And we actually took a job in Nebraska, which both of us are from Oklahoma. And the winters in Nebraska are much more severe than Oklahoma. So I think that we were both like, okay, we're going to do this. But we were a little scared about it. And whenever Terry Force found out, his then boss, he was working in Warwick on the Stewart Ranch, and she found out that we had took a job in Nebraska, and she said, you guys need to stay in Oklahoma, and I'm going to open up a camp job for you in Caddo. And so we were both pretty relieved, and we moved to Caddo. And then from there, I was there about 2 weeks, and I was like, because Evan was just like, take your time, find a job. And Caddo, there's not a whole lot going on. And Durant was the closest town from there. And I took a bank job. And while I was at that bank, going to school for what I went to school for, this creative path, it was nothing against bank jobs, but I hated it real bad. And so I really needed a creative outlet. And I ordered some Navajo blankets. I didn't really even have an idea as to what I was going to do with them, but, I was designing our house or whatever, getting it all set up, being a homemaker and a wife. And I also ordered some really neat Southwestern upholstery fabric, and I was going to make some pillows for our couch. Well, when I got it in, I was like, this is really cool. Like, I think I might want to try to make a bag for myself out of it or something. And I didn't even have a sewing machine. And so I just did it by hand, and I started carrying it, and people asked me where I got it. And when I said I make them, they were like, well, will you make me one? And I was like, you would want it? you would pay money for this? And so that's what really got the wheels turning on it, because it was like, I hate this bank job, and people would actually pay money for what I'm just making with a needle and thread. So from there, I kind of got the idea of it, and then actually a friend that I made at the bank, she grew up in Tishomingo, which Tishomingo at the time is where the Pink Pistol was, and there was a job opening there, and she knew I hated the bank. And she told me, I think that you need to call this number. And I was like, why do I need to call this number? And she was like, because they have a job opening. And I was like, who is this? And she was like, just call the number and talk to them, and I'll tell them that you're going to call. So I didn't really know what it was whenever I was calling. I just knew that it was like more creative than what I was doing at the time. And she told me, look up this website. And so I did. And I was like, is this Miranda Lambert store? And she was like, yes. And I was like, I am in. Like, sign me up. And so I called the manager, Stacy Addison, and I set up an interview and went to the interview. And it was really cool. It was a really cool opportunity to work there for the time that I did. I was the visual merchandiser, and then I helped with buying also. And then I worked there about 8 months, and Evan and I got the opportunity to move here to Osage County. And I think we had been dating about 2 years, and he bought a horse here in Osage County. And I'd never been. Like, I lived in Oklahoma, but I'd never been. And if you'd have asked me then, I'd have told you there's no pretty parts of Oklahoma. And so we drove to Hominy to pick up that horse. And I was like, oh my gosh, this can't be Oklahoma. This is beautiful. And so when we got that opportunity to move here, it was like a no-brainer. And in that time that I'd worked at the Pink Pistol, I'd kept, mulling over the idea of my own business. And so I saved up money, and I bought myself a leather sewing machine, like, in that time. And so whenever we moved here, and I'll add this, we lived in Caddo, and Tishomingo was about an hour drive, and which was going to be that way no matter what, for what I was, for what kind of job that I was hunting. And I really hated the commute, because I loved the lifestyle that we were living, but I did not get to enjoy it at all, especially in the winter. I mean, you're getting home after dark, you're leaving early in the morning, getting home after dark. And I was like, well, we sat down, and we had decided, that we were going to live this lifestyle, and I'm not a part of it. So what can I do to fulfill myself to be a part of this lifestyle and also, like, raise babies one day? And so when we got here, I was like, I'm going to try this. Like, what's stopping me at this point? I'm a ranch wife, so we got a home. That's how ranch jobs are. You get a home, and you don't have to worry about a whole lot of, electric bills and stuff like that. So I was like, what a great time to just jump into this and see how it goes. And if I fail, then I'll go get a job.
Yeah.
And so I sat down at my sewing machine, and I just started building. And actually, I built my first 5 purses with that upholstery fabric that I had bought for the pillows.
Wow.
Yeah. So I did that, and it took me 3 weeks to build 5 purses, and a lot of tears. I didn't know what I was doing. I guess a little bit of background in sewing for me is, like, my mom is a great seamstress. She spent a lot of time with my great-grandma and learning how to sew. And so I had the basis of how to do it and how to work a sewing machine. But working with leather and building a handbag in general, like knowing the steps to take to do that, I was completely oblivious. So it's been a lot of trial and error. And so I built those 5 bags. I put them online, and they sold, which was just like, whoa, I mean, like, maybe this can work. I mean, I live to see another day. And so I just kept going from there and, started taking custom orders. And I would just take anything that I could get at that point. And really, it went from there.
Wow. So you started online. Did you have a name, or did you go through like Etsy?
Okay, so no, I did not go through Etsy. So whenever we were still in Caddo, actually I worked with another ranch wife from the Stewart Ranch at the Pink Pistol, and so we would commute together. And she had a dream of starting her own silversmith business too, so we would talk about it back and forth. And then we threw names back and forth. And cactuses are a huge deal and have been for a few years. So I was like trying to come up with something like that. And it was not me. It just wasn't working. And I love butterflies. I always have. Like, since I was tiny, when I was 7, I gave a speech on butterflies. And it's just been something, I don't know, it's just, everybody has their own symbol, and that's kind of mine. And so I was trying to think of something that sounded kind of Southwestern, but was also, I don't know, true to me too.
Yeah.
And I love the lantana flowers, and lantana flowers attract butterflies more than any flower that I'd ever seen. So I liked that name. And then actually what finished naming my company was like needing to get it LLC'd. And like the names that were available, my father-in-law actually helped me with that. And I had a few different options. And from those options, he was like, well, this is kind of what we could do that isn't taken. And I was like, wow, I love that. So Lantana Made, it is.
Perfect. So you started online. How did you get the word out?
I went to trade show after trade show.
Okay.
The first year, it was just like on the road constantly. The first and second year, I would say, I handed out a ton of business cards. I made bags and gave them out for free, and that was kind of hard to do, like to influencers and stuff like that. And that was kind of hard to do because you spend a lot of hours on these, and you never know if that's going to pay you back, but it did. It really did, taking those chances.
Wow. So you're on the trade show circuit selling purses. Was there a moment where it kind of took off? Do you feel like?
So I feel like with this job, it is so unconventional, and when you go to school for something that you love for 5 years, it's just like you think you're going to get a job in that field. And then whenever that didn't happen, it was this constant question of, am I doing the right thing? And I feel like God really led me down the path that I am today. And I would say the day that I felt like it was like a sign from the Lord that I was doing what I should have been doing is when Cowgirl magazine, they did an article on me online, and I could have passed out. I really could have. It was just like, here I am in Hominy, Oklahoma, working my tail off, and I didn't know if it was being recognized. And then there it was, an article with my bags saying, and I'm pretty sure it was like the title, New Designer We Love, and I could have fell over. And at that point, I really thought, like, here, I'm doing it. I'm doing it, and this is what I'm meant to do.
Yeah. And since then, I mean, now you've been featured in magazines like Cowboys and Indians, Western Horse and Gun, Chrome, and like you mentioned, you've had a lot of Western influencers promoting your products. I mean, what has that done for your business?
I think that it took it from, I guess it launched it into it was a serious designer type bag. I worked endlessly on creating a product that I would be proud of. And, whenever you sit down and you think, what can I bring differently to the table? I wanted to make sure that I was different. And what I noticed with bags, handmade bags that were on the market, is a lot of them didn't have an interior. And so I thought, how can I create a bag that when I'm sitting at a trade show and someone walks up to look at it, what's the first thing that a lady does when they see a bag they like? They open it up and they check out the inside. And so I thought, I need to make sure, that I have a product that 360 inside and out I'm proud of. And that took a lot of trial and error, because when you're working with leather, it's kind of a hard thing to do, to make sure that inside and out that it looks, the part. And so I guess with every single email that I got about, would you want to send us products for this shoot? And, well, when do you need them? Like, next week, could you send us 5? And I'm like,
oh, man.
Whoa, because I didn't keep a lot in stock then. And mostly it was just custom orders. So guess what I did? I said, yeah, of course I can. And I stayed up all night long, building day in and day out until it was 2 days before it was time to ship them. And I paid for overnighting, and I took every single opportunity that I could to get my name out there, because I thought, this is free publicity. Why not?
Wow. So it seems like there's a lot of things you learned at school, and even through your internship too at the Fort Worth Stockyards, that you were able to translate into what you're doing now.
Yes, ma'am. Whenever I switched to merchandising, I took a sustainability class, and I feel like, in the fashion industry, it's really important that we stay aware in that. And so with that, with what I learned, a huge thing was like fast fashion is ruining the planet, and how can we help that? How can we be, responsible, I guess, designers? And the way that coordinates to what I do now is creating an emotional attachment to things. And there's several different ways that you can do that as a designer or as a retailer. And one of those ways is visual merchandising, because as we all know, internet sales are huge, and that's the way that the world's moving. But how can we stay relevant as, a retailer or someone at a trade show trying to physically sell things? And that's creating an experience when people are shopping. And so that's one way to create an emotional attachment to an item, is to say, I love this because of the experience that, I remember. Just like all of what Pawhuska is an experience. I mean, the Merc and every other merch in it, you have a feeling when you come to Pawhuska. And so that was something that I really wanted to tie into what I do now. And another way to do that is to, the custom things, the custom pieces, because people want to feel like they were a part of that designing process. So that's an important takeaway, I feel like. And I took a lot of classes like to help me create my own website, and the different Adobe classes that help me design my own logo. And like, it is all me from head to toe. I didn't really contract anything out, which now I think, man, you could have slept a lot longer if you would have done that. But I feel like I said, that God really led me down the path, and I really didn't know what I was doing at the time, because if you would have asked me, when you grow up, you're going to make handbags and you're going to make a go at it, I would have said you're crazy. So I feel like with the combination of design and then the more business merchandising things, it was just meant to be.
Yeah, it's crazy how as entrepreneurs we kind of have to be jacks of all trades.
Yes, got it. You have to do it all.
Yeah. Well, what are some of your favorite pieces or collaborations that you've gotten to work on?
My favorite pieces have been those of late, because I feel like my craftsmanship is at a point right now where I'm really confident in it. And, starting out, everybody is learning and figuring out what their look is. And right now, my medicine bags are my favorite. It's actually what I carry. And I love the wristlets that I make, and tote bags. The medicine bags is my favorite. So
very fun. Where do you get your inspiration from?
I would say where I get my inspiration from is antique styles, I think, and then recreating them in my own way to make them current. And like just the textiles and leathers themselves, I feel like speak to me. That's another thing. Like with my degree, I took textile classes, and I don't buy my leather online. I go to the leather store and I spend hours in them, and I have to touch and feel every single piece to make sure that it is the quality that I want for my bags. And then when I get them home and I put them next to vintage serapes that I've collected, or Turkish rugs, or just a lot of the things that I've spent hours and hours researching, then they kind of just pull together, and it comes to my mind exactly what I want to do.
So you kind of surround yourself with the things that, inspire you. And
Yes.
it just comes out.
Yeah, exactly. It really does. And I've kind of been that way my whole life. I've made my own accessories, like from the time that I can remember. Things like textiles just speak to me. So
I love that. Well, I'm curious. You are a stay-at-home mom and you have this amazing business. How do you manage all of this and out of your home?
Well, we knew that we wanted to have kids, and that was, of course, a basis around me starting this and making sure that, I was doing something that I could raise my children at home, and that sounds wonderful. That sounds perfect. Like butterflies should be flapping when I say that. But whenever it all comes together, it's not so perfect, And I would say that the best advice that I can get is make sure that you have a routine, and make sure that you know that it's okay if it's chaos at first. Whenever I first brought my daughter home, she had food allergies, and so it was constant colicking, and I hadn't just really been around a whole lot of kids, so I was like, this isn't how I pictured it, I'm supposed to be making handbags with you in your playpen, looking over at me grinning, and it was not at all like that. And, my mom just kept telling me, hang in there, it's going to get easier. And I strapped her to me when she was 5 weeks old, and I went out to my shop, and I did as much as I could in a day. And every day it seemed like it got a little bit more and a little bit more, until now my business is better than it ever has been. And so I would say for moms who feel like they're at that point of, why did I do this? This isn't going to work. Hang in there, because God's going to bless you. You're doing what's right for your family and what's right for you. And you're going to find your groove. You will.
Yeah. What advice would you have for somebody starting out as a creative entrepreneur?
I would say be authentic and true to yourself. There's so many different, bag makers out there and silversmiths out there. It's so important to be you and to sell that. With my bags being so done on the inside and the outside, that's great that they're a good product. But the issue with that is a lot of people look at them and think that they're factory made. And so I really have to focus on marketing myself and my story. I'm a ranch wife. I made these, and so whenever I'm speaking to my followers on Facebook or Instagram, or I'm at a trade show, I am really personal about it. I never say we here at Lantana Made, because that's an illusion. It's me, and it's okay to just be you. And it's okay to say, this is a one-woman show, and I'm doing it. And so that's what I would say is be authentic to yourself, and you be confident in that. Like what I was saying about marketing me and being personal to me, I experienced a lady that came into my booth at a trade show. This actually was last fall, and she said, "Oh man, I didn't know that Lantana Made was going to be here. I just bought a handbag at a different booth, and had I known, I would have came here." And I was like, "Oh, it's okay. Look around. Feel free to, touch and feel, look inside." My normal spiel. And she said, "So are you their sales rep?" And I was like, No, ma'am. I'm Emily Myers. I made, I design these. I do it all. It's a one-woman show. And she was like, no way. And I said, yeah. She said, well, I custom ordered a bag from you 2 years ago. And I literally thought who I was speaking to was just like a sales representative, and that, these are kind of assembly line made. And I was like, no, that this is me. And my mom was sitting there. She's my biggest advocate, especially at these trade shows. She was like, no, ma'am, like she does this all, she has created this product. And at that moment, it was like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I really need to make sure that people know that even though it's such a finished product, that it is 100% handmade by me, and people love that. They love that, you spit, that one person came up with this in their head. They don't have a leather cutter. They don't, because a lot of bigger bag companies have like someone who lays the patterns out on leather, and like, they everybody has their own job, and that's awesome too. There's, nothing wrong with that. But when someone realizes that this is one person from start to finish, that's just a really neat thing. And it's ever more popular right now, and it's nothing to be ashamed of to be a very small business.
That's great. Well, what's your favorite thing about this business?
I think my favorite thing about this business is the people and the community behind it. I love that I build bags, and I love that I'm in the fashion industry, but I don't just want to be known for that. Like, I want to make sure that Lantana Made is reaching, I guess, more hearts than just shoulders. And so whenever I feel like, there's a crisis, like the recent floods, and you hear about horse barns that were completely demolished and horses died, in that flooding, and cattle being swept down a river, and just understanding the impact of those ranchers' lives because of the disasters. Like, I feel for it, and I want to reach out, and I feel like the platform that bags have given me and the followers that I've created through that, I'm able to reach them, and say, we need to pull together and we need to help. And the awesome thing in the ranching world is that we do pull together and we help each other. And to me, that's awesome.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, what's next for you and Lantana Made?
Well, as for right now, I feel like I'm at a place where my online sales are doing really well, and I'm going to keep trucking. And like this year and last year, I've really slowed down on trade shows because, my daughter's only 16 months old. And so next year, that's going to speed up again. I'll hit more trade shows, and eventually, way off in the future, I would love to own my own brick and mortar store. And my vision is like half my shop and half, a retail space. That's what I would love to do one day.
Do you do any wholesale right now?
I do not. I did. But like I said, whenever I had my daughter, I really kind of had to prioritize.
Yep.
And so I am not right now. And I don't really know if I'll ever start it up again. I could, but as of right now, no.
Well, I'm excited about this brick and mortar thing. That sounds like a lot of fun.
I would love for it to happen one day.
Yeah. Well, how do we follow along and keep up with new designs coming out and different things you have going on?
The best place is my Facebook page, Lantana Made. And that's where I share, personal stories about my life and all the new designs and stuff. So I have an Instagram too, but I would say my Facebook page is the best place.
Okay, great. Well, we'll link to that in the show notes.
Okay.
Emily, thanks so much for being on the podcast. This has been great.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I love that Emily's craftsmanship is so good that she has to be intentional about telling people she makes these bags out of her home on the ranch. And that was some great advice on the importance of marketing herself and her story. Huge thanks to Emily for being on the podcast, and be sure to go check out the show notes for links to her products and social pages. And thanks to you for tuning in. We'll be back next week. Have a great day, everybody.